Hey guys, welcome into the show. My name is Susan Thomas. This is The Circle featuring the secret stash and also a soldering demonstration today. I'm going to go through a demonstration on soldering today. I'm going to be using the copper wire and some really cool large hole beads that I have here today because I've been making these little fidget bracelets, and one of the things I think would be kind of cool is to incorporate some gemstones into the design of the fidget bracelet. So these large hole beads are perfect. They fit right on my 14 gauge wire. So I'm going to show you guys how to solder while beads are on the piece of jewelry. So that'll be kind of cool. We're going to focus first on the circle, and I wanted to kind of do something just a little bit, just level up just a little bit. Now I always kind of do rings on the air, and we'll do a couple of those here as well, just to show you guys soldering a couple times. But I'm going to actually take this 14 gauge copper wire and make a bangle. You can see I'm wearing some bangles on my wrist. This is one of the ones I showed you today that has, it's a little fidget bangle right there with the little jump rings, the soldered jump rings. I'm actually going to solder this with some beads on it, so that we actually get a gemstone component without having to do any setting of the stone. But all my bangles that I make are generally 14 gauge wire. These are just some kind of crazy bangles right here, and that's that little one. And when I do it, I always kind of start with about 8 1/4 inches of wire because I'm looking for a medium size bangle, and because that's what size I wear. So a lot of people ask, oh, if you're making bangles, what size do you make? So I always bring out my little cheat sheet right here. If you're making a small bangle, if you're making a round bangle, you're going to go 8 inches. If you're making a medium bangle, you're going to go 8 1/4 inches. There we go, and see that a little bit better. And if you're going large, you're going to go 8 5/8. Those are my measurements, my personal measurements. And when I make bangles, and I've made a lot of them, these are the measurements that I use. You do not measure them on the mandrel, you measure them on a ruler before you make them, okay? Then you use the mandrel to finish them, and we will do that today. Now, if you're wanting to go smaller, like extra small or extra large, you're just going to size down by 1/4 inch or up by 1/4 inch. So an extra small will be 7 1/4, 7 3/4. You make sense? Double extra small will be 7 1/2. If you're going up, you just add 1/4 inch, just boom, boom, boom. And that way, you wouldn't think 1/4 inch would make such a big difference, but boy, does it. Like I said, I have 5 different strands of gemstones in the show today. To me, this is an opportunity that you might not have thought of for your large hole beads. This is an opportunity to actually add a gemstone component to a piece without having to try to do anything hard like setting a gemstone. This is fossil stone. This one's going to be demortarite in quartz. This one it's actually matte turquoise simulant. I like to call it African turquoise. So I've already measured my copper wire, and there was 3 stones on here that I'm just going to use. I'm going to use those 3. I already measured my copper. It's 8 1/4 inches, and I've already flush cut it. And we talked today about flush cutting and how important it is to actually cut a nice flat flush cut on this piece. I use plier 61 most of the time. I also use my memory wire cutter to get those flat flush cuts. So I'm just actually going to string 3, and just 3, because I want a fidget bracelet. I don't want to have tons of stones on here, and I also don't want to get my stones in the way when I'm soldering. So I'm just going to string 3 of those beautiful fossil stones on there. Aren't those fun? I tried to pick 3 that were kind of different. Then that would look really pretty with the copper. So, and also the cool thing is they're gemstones. It's not going to hurt them to go in my pickle a little bit later. So then I'm going to take this, and remember what you're trying to do when you're bringing these 2 pieces of wire together is get them as close as possible together with as little air as possible between them, and as close to straight together as you can. Now, easier said than done, of course, but that looks pretty good to me. So I'm just going to take my cross-lock tweezer and use that to stabilize my piece right there. Now, because I've got stones on there, I'm actually going to take one more step. What I want to do is, normally I would heat the whole piece. One of the things you're doing when you're soldering is they always say heat your whole piece, heat the whole thing so it evenly distributes the solder. But today I'm going to cheat a little bit, and that's one of the things you learn after you actually learn how to do something. Then the next thing you learn how to do is cheat. So I am going to use some water, and I'm actually going to quench the the stones down at the bottom in that water, and that's going to keep them cool while I'm soldering. Now we're going to take our torch. Now what I did was I got some of the sterling silver solder. We are using sterling today, and I do use a rotary tool to clean up that sterling afterwards. SS65 is soft sterling solder, and it basically is going to flow at a temperature of somewhere between 1200 and 1300 and some degrees Fahrenheit. So it's very important to have a really good torch. It's also, I'm loving that we've got the good solder in our show. Here's your torch. The torch is included in the kit, and folks, it will actually not only melt and flow your solder, it will work, which is important. So now I'm going to get the solder pick, which is also included in the kit, and I'm going to get a little bit of solder. And one of the things that people always do when they first start is they always use too much solder. So I'm just going to show you right here up close and personal. You just need a very small amount of that solder. Now, solder paste actually has a couple things in it. It has some organic material, and it also has flux in the mix. Flux, like I always tell you, flux equals flow. No flux, no flow. So it's cool to use solder paste because it makes it easier, because it takes one step out of the process. You don't have to spray the piece with flux because the flux is already in there. Now, I always spray it anyway, and the reason is this, because as I've learned soldering and advanced my skills, you want to keep that piece as clean as possible. And flux, especially the spray flux here, a lot of it actually will also keep your piece very clean. And so when you put it in, when you actually do this, you're going to get less fire scale, less mess to clean up, and less mess, in my opinion, is always better. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn our torch on, and essentially, obviously, this is the whole thing. It's got a little stand on it like this, and this is where you fill it at the bottom with your butane, which you can get in any hardware store. It just fills right up in there, and then this guy right here, this is going to be your safety. This will not turn on unless that safety is down. It is not childproof, just saying, but that safety has to be down to press it. And then this is your continuous flame. So you turn it on. So we're going to heat this up, and I'm just concentrating just on the area that I want to solder, and the reason is because I don't want to get any heat down there on those stones. So I'm just going to heat this up. Now, one of the things about soldering 14 gauge wire is it's going to take longer to heat up the area high enough to actually melt or flow the solder, and also because I have the bottom in a cool water, it's going to also take a little bit longer. So I'm just going to heat that up, and I'm concentrating that heat right about 3 millimeters from the place where I actually want that solder to flow. Then I'm going to pop that on there like so, and I'm just going to wait for that to flow. And you're just looking for that nice, sparkly, shiny, and then once that's done, you did it. Done. That is soldered. Now let's pull this out of here just for a second so you guys can see that those little guys down at the bottom stayed safe, cool in the water, even though I was having issues with my torch. And you know, me having issues with that torch, I think actually it's good that I have issues with that torch in front of you guys, because there's so many things that can happen when you are working with fire, and that's why you should always have your hair back. That's why I've got my glasses on, you know, or you have safety glasses or something like that. But that's also why you don't have that's why you have a fireproof surface, and that's why I have this big old slab in front of me. Because you just have to make sure you practice safety. And if this was my studio at home, I keep the whole surface covered with something called backer board, which is something they put behind ceramic tiles. But anyway, it's fireproof, and so you put it on there, and bottom line is it keeps everything safe. Because I've burnt up tools, I've done all kinds of things, and you just need to be as safe as possible, especially when you're first getting started, because you're going to be nervous. I'm not nervous because I've seen that happen before, although it did kind of make me jump. But when you're just getting started, you're not going to know, like, why is that happening? What happened? What did I do? Why is my torch not working? Well, my torch is working fine. I just overfilled it with butane, and he's a little bit old and he's kind of temperamental. So. But for you, for the very first time, I might not ever pick the torch up again if that happened to me the very first time, because I might be scared. And so I want you guys to be prepared for whatever is going to happen, and make sure that you're being safe, and make sure nobody's in front of you and nothing that you don't want burnt up is in front of you. Like a roll of paper towels would be bad to have out there. So this is my pickle pot. I am actually going to put the whole thing into the pickle. It is a citric acid pickle, so it should not hurt my my stones. So I'm just going to pop that in there. Notice I did not put my stainless steel in there, so I'm not going to contaminate my pickle. Because it's very important. Make sure that you're safe. Make sure you're safe. That's why I have this fireproof surface here. Let me look at this here and see. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. So this is actually not having any effect on my my fossil stone, which I'm happy about. So yeah, these stones that I have here today, I'm more than willing to go ahead and pop them into the pickle. It might give it a little bit of a matte finish, but I still think that's kind of cool. And actually one of the stones actually has a matte finish already. So now you can look here and you can see what I have is my solder join right here. Now for me, I actually use my jewel tool to finish these off, and I clean that down as much as possible so that it's invisible, but you're gonna see you probably see just a little bit of it. Let me see if I can even find it on this piece right here. Actually, I can't even find it. So you'll see a little bit, but you really don't see much. There it is. That's my solder join right, do you see it? I mean, you really can't, right? So it really camouflages very well if you do a good job cleaning it up. But a lot of you guys I know aren't gonna have a lot of, like, you're not gonna have a jewel tool, or you're not gonna have a really good rotary tool at home. That's okay. What I like to do is I like to actually oxidize these pieces and then hammer them and texturize them a lot. And so if you do that, that also camouflages that sterling silver piece. There's no copper solder. Before you guys ask me, you're not gonna go out and find any copper solder. So I wish there was, but there just isn't. So you can use rose gold solder. It's just more expensive. But I find that if I do a good job cleaning up my solder joint or a good job camouflaging it, I don't even notice it. So I like it. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just hammering this out. And because I have the stones on there, I'm just gonna kind of keep this up higher on my mandrel so that I don't get a funny spot in my bangle. Now this is very important to do, especially with a bangle if you're working with copper, because you need to harden up the metal a lot. And so Judy said she solders with an iron. You're not going to be able to solder like this type of wire with a soldering iron. Now I do know a lot of people solder base metal with a soldering iron. I am no expert in soldering irons. I just know that you can't use it to solder with sterling silver solder. So it's just a totally different technique. A lot of people do it for stained glass, but it just does not work for this type of thing. All right, so basically I'm rounding this out, and then it's not going to go all the way down to my medium because I've got those 3 stones on the other side, but I'll just kind of show you guys how that turned out, and see I've got this really cute little fidget bracelet like that. And then if I did a lot of hammering on this and everything, I could hammer the side on my bench block. Here's another piece here. Let me just kind of push this out of the way just a little bit. Put this on here, and I always do this as well. I always put it on my bench block and give it a hammer from the sides, and that kind of flattens out the bangle and also helps kind of camouflage that little solder join from the side as well. Pretty cute, right? I mean, and now you can see it's a little harder as well. So that's just a cute little bangle. I will take it back and clean it up. And if you're wondering why mine are so shiny, I actually used my jewel tool to do that. But if you do not have a jewel tool and you do not have a rotary tool, a really good just artisan way to finish this up, in addition to actually texturizing this, is to take steel wool. And this is 00 steel wool. You can pick it up at any hardware store. And as you kind of see how shiny that's getting, and so you just kind of go around there and shine it up with your steel wool. And folks, these are good enough to sell. I did this for years. I didn't have a jewel tool. I didn't have anything but the torch that you guys see me working with today and some steel wool. I texturized them, I oxidized them, and then I just polished them up with steel wool. And it makes it shiny, it makes it pretty, and you can see I've got all that texture on there from the hammer. I've got these 3 beads. Hey, I got 3 fossil stone beads on there, and I can put all those different beads. Now I will see my pickle did kind of make them matte finish, so it did affect the surface of the stone. So I think that that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. So if I didn't want that matte finish on these stones, then I would have, like, basically I would have put half of this in and done something to hold the beads up top, and then flipped it and done the other half in the pickle. And that's just a way to do it without getting the stones in there. I did not think, I was willing to sacrifice these 3 stones. So that's why I went ahead and threw them in there. So you just have to be careful. If you start soldering and you notice there are things in front of you, like even if it's like a little piece of cord or something, just take a minute to move everything out of your way. So all these little rings are the same technique. This is the little, this is one I was getting ready to do. These are like little swirl rings. See, isn't that fun? Now, if you guys want to use the copper and you want to get started with copper because it's very inexpensive and you want to keep it shiny, like you can see I've got this one really shiny, what you can do is just get an acrylic sealer and just spray that after you finish and it'll stay shinier. Or you can do what I did here, was oxidize it and then polish it up either with steel wool or with your jewel tool. And this one's oxidized and polished. So I've got that kind of oxidized look and I polished it up. So liver of sulfur gel that I used on that, and that kind of oxidizes it up. A few more things, just wanted to show you guys these other 3 strands. These are large hole beads as well, and if I used these 3 strands, I would definitely just use 1 bead on my fidget bangles. One of them is serpentine, and that's the green round in the center. These are all Dakota stones. They're all large hole beads. Smoky quartz, very unusual. That's an 8mm round. And then the final strand, which I think is just beautiful and buttery, is your Rocky Butte jasper. It's your biggest option in a 10mm round. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed soldering with me.